A big part of the history of the development of ethnic studies, as we've discussed in our class, is the activism and organizing that's been done by community members, youth, college students, parents, guardians, and families who have advocated for the right to a meaningful education that reflects the histories, knowledges, and contributions of our own communities. It was the activism and organizing done by communities that has contributed to the development of the REGSS department here at UTSA, as well as the programs housed within African American Studies, Mexican American Studies, Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, and continue to hold universities accountable to serving our local communities. For that reason, I'm very excited to welcome our invited guest, Ki'Amber Thompson, pronouns she, they, founder of the Charles Roundtree Bloom Project, and all of our new guests here today to our learning community. Ki'Amber, thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise, and guests, thank you for making time to grow and learn with us. Before reading Ki'Amber's bio, I would also like to thank the REGSS department here at UTSA, in particular our chair, Dr. Alejandra Elenes, for supporting the opportunity to bring in invited activists and community members to our campus. I would like to ask for everybody to remain on mute while our invited guest speaker presents, and feel free to utilize the chat to send questions, affirmations, constructive comments. I'll be monitoring the chat closely. And then also please be aware that the presentation is being recorded at the consent of our invited guest speaker. Before we begin, I also want to honor and acknowledge that we are all meeting here today on the traditional lands of the caretakers of the greater community, which includes the Istokna, Wahilteca, Tlaxcalteca, Apache, Comanche, as well as other band-based peoples indigenous to the territories that we now call South Texas. Now I get to introduce our invited speaker, Ki'Amber Thompson. She's a queer Black educator, facilitator, artist, healing justice practitioner, and doctoral student from the west side of San Antonio. Ki'Amber's work lies at the intersection of the prison industrial complex abolition and environmental justice. In 2019, Ki'Amber founded the Charles Roundtree Bloom Project, an outdoor healing justice program for youth impacted by incarceration in Yanaguana, San Antonio, Texas. The Bloom Project addresses some of the impacts of mass incarceration on communities and works towards prefiguring worlds beyond carceral geographies. Ki'Amber, thank you so much for being here today. I will mute myself and you're welcome to begin.
Cool, thank you, Sylvia, for that introduction. I made a slide deck for y'all, so I'm gonna share my screen. There we go. Cool, well, Sylvia already gave y'all my bio, but just to highlight a few things briefly. My name is Ki'Amber, use she and they pronouns. I'm currently based in and calling in from Santa Cruz, California, which is part of the Amamuksun tribal band territory, and I'm a full-time Ph.D. student at the University of California in Santa Cruz. On top of that, I also direct the Charles Roundtree Bloom Project, which I'll talk to you all about in a few minutes. And then, yeah, when I'm not doing all of that, I hula hoop, roller skater, write poetry, and newly I surf. So y'all can feel free to ask questions about those cool things too. But I wanted to give y'all some context and brief background into kind of my journey getting to where I am, as I figured there'd probably be some questions about that. So as I mentioned, I'm from the west side of San Antonio, but I also grew up on the east side as well for most of my life, and grew up in a really big family. I would really say that I grew up in a loving community and feel like I was truly raised by my community. And throughout my childhood, you know, being on the west side and the east side, I also experienced a lot of negative interactions with police officers and had several family members who were incarcerated throughout my life. And so, you know, that was, that was just like a very present part of my childhood as well, growing up where I grew up. And then, so I graduated from the Young Women's Leadership Academy, part of the first graduating class. And when I was applying to colleges, I was just wanting to get as far away from Texas as possible. So most of the schools that I applied to were on the East Coast. And then one school that I applied to was in California. And that's the school I ended up deciding to go to, Pomona College. It's a small liberal arts college, like an hour east of LA. And while I was there, I was studying English Lit, and then I was also studying environmental analysis with a focus on environmental justice. And so that's looking at the ways that race, class, and gender intersect with environmental issues. And pretty early on at my time in college, I got involved in environmental justice and climate justice organizing. So in my first year, I was involved with this student group who we were organizing to try to get our college to divest from fossil fuels. And so that was my first experience with organizing, and really appreciated that community and all that I learned there. And then in my second year at some point, I remember attending this talk that I just kind of like randomly went into, mostly because there was free lunch there. And so I went there, and there's this person, this organizer, who was talking about abolition, about prison abolition. And when I heard that term and what it meant, I don't know, something just clicked. It made so much sense to me, and I feel like I literally became obsessed with wanting to be a student of abolition. And I started a prison abolition organizing collective on my campus. And it was around that time that I also started thinking about, how is abolition related to environmental justice, or how is issues of incarceration and policing also connected to environmental injustice issues, and started exploring that as they had showed up in my own life, my own childhood, having had these traumatic encounters with police officers and different members of my family incarcerated, and then also being able to identify some of the environmental injustices in my own community, such as just like lack of access to healthy food options, for example. And that became the focus of my my interest and research in college, and ended up producing this my undergraduate thesis, which was called Prisons, Policing, and Pollution Toward an Abolitionist Framework Within Environmental Justice. And then, so I graduated in 2018 from undergrad, and then I had this internship through a fellowship called the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program. The internship was in Flint, based in Flint, Michigan, and with this organization called Freshwater Future, and we were piloting a youth water testing and education program where we trained high schoolers to test water for lead and be able to communicate those results. And that was just like a really awesome experience that I was grateful to be a part of. And now it turned into like the first ever community lab in Flint. That's community run and have access to a lab and data that they can trust, that's not coming from the state. And then after that summer internship, I moved to DC through another fellowship, a marine conservation fellowship, and was working at the Ocean Conservancy. And at the Ocean Conservancy, I was doing kind of policy research and storytelling work, thinking about diversity, equity, justice, and inclusion in the ocean conservation world. And it was during that time that I started ideating the Bloom Project, and so then that brings me to kind of what I'm doing now. So after that year fellowship in DC, I moved back to San Antonio in 2019 and piloted the first iteration of the Bloom Project. So I'll go more into like our mission and vision and kind of what it is that we actually do a little bit, but just to get to the how and why I started the Bloom Project. Yeah, so when I was in DC in 2018, I'm a planner, and so I was, thinking about what I wanted to do after the year in the fellowship, and decided that I really wanted to come back home to San Antonio, and wanted to find a way to give back to my community, the community that raised me. And so I started thinking about, what skills, what knowledge do I have to offer, what matters to me. And I kind of went back to my undergraduate thesis, and also started thinking about how can I operationalize some of the findings from that thesis into some meaningful work. And so I was thinking about the kids in my family who, like me, also had incarcerated parents and caregivers, and knowing the impact of that experience. And then also thinking about, I think what I had to offer. And one of the big things in college was that I came to find being outside, being in the outdoors, reconnecting with the land as something very healing for me and as a space of refuge. And so, I thought, why not combine these two experiences or is like knowledge that I have, and be able to offer youth who've come from similar experiences that I had as a kid, offer them this like space of healing and community building in the outdoors. And as I was ideating and finally writing it down, and started to apply to grants and fellowships to get this funded and supported. I remember I got a call from my grandma while I was at work at the Ocean Conservancy, and she had told me that my cousin Charles Roundtree, so picture here, we called Chop. He was shot and killed by a police officer, and yeah, that was, to say the least, really tough. And I decided that I wanted to do something to honor his life and his legacy. And so I decided to name the program in honor of him. At first, it was just the Bloom Project. And so the full name is the Charles Roundtree Bloom Project. And yeah, that his death gave me more reason to want to go back home and to start this program for youth like him who don't always get the opportunity to bloom to their full potential. So what we do, our mission statement is that we create spaces of communal healing for youth impacted by incarceration. And we do that by facilitating healing-centered outdoor experiences and providing culturally relevant environmental justice education. And the goal of that is to help them envision new possibilities for their lives, for their communities and for our world. And what we're working toward is a world where all youth have access to the resources, tools, and support that they need to bloom to their full potential and can become leaders in their communities and in the world more broadly. We envision a world where our communities are connected to the land and can go outside and build community, learn, heal, and explore. And these are some pictures. Pictures you saw earlier, in this picture right here was at the Roots of Change Community Garden near downtown on the east side. This awesome organization called SWOO, Southwest Workers Union. Yeah, so the kind of like 4 main components of what we do, a lot of that is also in the mission, but one of the core aspects is that we provide this culturally relevant, place-based environmental justice education. The second part is wherever we are in the outdoors, whatever we're doing or learning about, the center of that is about connecting with each other, connecting with the land, and with a focus on healing. And then third component of what we do is we are introducing our youth to environmental career pathways. And then fourth component is we are developing our youth's sense of agency and are there to support them in achieving their goals. And so the Bloom Project is a program of Black Outside Incorporated. And just for some very quick context, Black Outside was kind of starting around the same time that Bloom Project was, but a little bit earlier. And we started working together very closely and decided that it made a lot of sense to join forces and like merge as one part of one entity. And so along with the Bloom Project, Black Outside has 2 other programs. One is Camp Founder Girls, and it's a summer camp for Black girls. And then the other one is the Brotherhood Collective, and it's a mentorship program for Black boys. And at Black Outside, we have these beautiful values and practices that if y'all are interested in being able to see those, I can maybe send something after that has a description of what each of those values and practices means. But just to like list them off really quickly. So the first thing that I'll read is the value, and the second thing is the practice. Collective liberation, for us, by us, regenerative movement, create joy, continuous curiosity, wholehearted courage, honor histories, and love. So everything that we do try to make sure that we are like living into those values and practices. And yeah, I don't know, just to share like an example of something that we've done. The last thing that we did, Black Outside as a whole, we led a backpacking trip in Colorado. This was our first ever out-of-state trip that we led. But we took youth from the Bloom Project, from Camp Founder Girls, and from the Brotherhood Collective. And these were youth ages 15 and up. The oldest youth that we had on that trip was 20. And yeah, it was probably half of their first time on a plane, and all of their first time backpacking in the mountains. And yeah, it was just like a really awesome experience. A lot of them, actually all of them, came off that trip saying that, you know, after having that experience, that they feel like they can do anything. It was really challenging. We hiked like, I think a total of 14 miles, reaching as high as 11,000 feet in elevation. And we were out there in the backcountry for 3 days. And they're in Colorado for a total of 6 days, I believe. But yeah, our youth, they inspire us and keep us going, and they definitely inform the work that we're doing. The feedback that I get from them is so important, just to make sure that the work continues to be meaningful for them, relevant for them, and being able to meet their needs and desires as well. And that's all. I want to leave the rest of the time for questions. And just quick plug. Yeah, if you do want to know what ways you can support, easiest way to support is you can follow us on Instagram at Ki'Amber Bloom Project. On IG, you could also spread the word about the amazing work that we're doing. If you can donate. You can go on our website, ki'amberbloomproject.org, and donate any amount. And then you can also volunteer if you're interested in donating your time and energy.
Yay, thank you so much, Ki'Amber. I have a couple of questions myself, but I want to, of course, open it up to folks who just witnessed your presentation. So does anybody have any questions, either in the chat or off of mute, that you would like to ask? I'm originally from San Antonio, from the far west side of San Antonio. And it wasn't until I left, and I see a question in the chat, so I'll get to that one too. But it wasn't until I left to go to my PhD program in Utah that I had ever experienced mountains or hiking or outdoors. And I was so surprised at how healing it was to be in that, in that space. So I find it really amazing and beautiful that you make that connection. What are some of the young people's reactions? You mentioned a little bit in your presentation, but these are folks from San Antonio, right? From Black and brown communities. Like, yeah, what are some of the things that they share when they're in that space, like being introduced to mountains that way?
Yeah, honestly, it's awe. Especially, I mean, we do like very local stuff. So stuff like community gardens. We've taken a trip to Austin. We've have done some stuff at a state park, Lost Maple State Park. And then we've also done Big Bend National Park, and then Colorado is the furthest trip we've taken. And so all of those very different experiences in terms of what the landscape is, but yeah, it's awe. It's also like excitement to do more, to explore more. I was talking to one of the youth last night, just getting some quick feedback as I was planning for next year, and you know, the most consistent feedback is like they want to see more, do more, go more places. And yeah, as soon as we got back from Colorado, we had group chat with all the youth and the staff on that trip, and they're like, all right, where are we going next? Like, they're like Alaska, Hawaii, and just, you know, listing off, dreaming of places. But yeah, there's a lot of energy and excitement there.
That makes me so happy to hear, because I think being from San Antonio and coming from like such a working class community that's like prevalent throughout San Antonio, sometimes there's a feeling of like you don't want to leave. Like, I remember I didn't want to move to Utah to go to my PhD program because I was scared, and like all of my family was scared. But then being able to have the opportunity to leave and know that you would be okay and that things could
Yeah.
be well. I love that that's something that the young people get to experience. Super
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. And one of our youth, the oldest one who went on the Colorado trip, it took so many steps for me to get him on that plane. Yeah, going to replace his like ID, and on the day of, he had called me at because we had an early flight. It was a 6 a.m. flight, so we had to be at the airport at 4 a.m. Called me at I think 3 a.m. and was like, I don't think I can do this. Feeling anxious, not feeling good, hadn't slept, and I was just like, I believe in you, you're gonna really enjoy this trip, and called him an Uber to get to the airport, and yeah, he made it, he enjoyed it. Glad that he went and didn't stay back, but yeah, it's definitely a challenge and can be scary to get out of your comfort zone and to try these new experiences.
Yeah, and I love that it provides an opportunity to folks to experience what it means to connect with land, because I think it was harder for me to understand that growing up in San Antonio, where you don't go outside because it's hot, but then recognizing relationship to land goes deeper than that. So I love that you're offering that soon. We have a couple of questions in the chat. One is a question regarding your process of applying for funding, if you can share that with us as we think about what things we can ideate as well. Then I'll go to the second question. And I see, Liz, your hand too as well.
Yeah, as far as funding, yes, Bloom Project is funded. So when I first when it was still an idea, I had applied to a grant, and I applied to a couple fellowships, 3 fellowships. 2 said no. I got the third one. The fellowship that I ended up getting didn't actually come with any funds attached, but it came with mentorship and a community of other entrepreneurs. But the grant I was able to get was like $2,500, and yeah, that was enough to be able to pilot something and do what I wanted to do, to test this idea to see if it was a thing that would work and that was wanted and needed. And so now, as a whole, Black Outside as a whole, since we're all part of the same entity, a lot of our, so some of our funding comes from donations. Really appreciate the people who donate monthly, donate quarterly, even if it's like $10, it's like some income coming in. This past year, 2020, summer 2020, we got this surge in donations because of the Black Lives Matter uprisings and the kind of racial justice awakening that was occurring for some people. Start donating, and then Bloom Project in particular, we've got a good chunk of our money from grants in comparison to other Black Outside programs, and then we have these some awesome partnerships, sponsorships by outdoor industry companies like Yeti. Is our biggest sponsor. The North Face, Black Diamond is one of our newest. So those companies support by providing us gear, outdoor gear, but also funds as well. So that's how the program is funded. And with kind of thinking about process, a lot of that in terms of grants has mostly been filling out written applications, searching up these opportunities, Google searching, looking at different directories where they show grants and fellowships, and applying to the ones that fit. And yeah, with actually the very first grant that I got, the small grant, it was through this organization based in Atlanta called the Greening Youth Foundation, and the money that the money that they were getting was coming from the North Face, and it was so through that first grant, I was submitting kind of like updates on the program and pictures and things like that, and the North Face reached out because the Greening Youth Foundation was reporting to the North Face. And so now the North Face has become a direct partner and a bigger sponsor of our work. And so we're able to get funding from them without having to have like applied for anything. And so that's like an indirect, I guess, way that we've been able to get funding.
I only learned about those places when I moved to Salt Lake. So that's really cool that they are giving money. And yeah, and it makes me feel better about Yeti, which I see everywhere in Texas. So thank you for sharing that. We have another question in the chat asking about if you wouldn't mind sharing any personal experience you had that gave you a spark to being connected with the land and healing with the land.
Yes, I can tell you like the exact experience that like shifted something for me. So at Pomona College, they have this orientation program called Orientation Adventure. And basically as a first year, you choose from like a list of, I think like almost 20 different orientation adventures. And so some of those things are like sea kayaking, backpacking at different levels, going to places like Sequoia National Park and Yosemite. I didn't know what any of those places were. I didn't even know how to pronounce Yosemite. So I was looking at this list of things. The one that I ended up choosing and going on was called community engagement. I was like, I know what community engagement is. Like, I like doing community service work. And so on that OA is what they're called. On that OA, we did camp. We camped at a state park near Malibu. We also got to hike and kayak. But one of the nights, we had spent a night at a Chumash reservation in Malibu, and we were there. We were kind of taking out some plants and planting native plants to that area. And it was that process of like planting and having my hands in the soil, and also like being welcomed in and learning about the Chumash and their stories. It was just like a really beautiful experience overall. And I remember going back after that OA when we got back to campus and reflecting on that experience. And yeah, it was that experience of giving back to the land in a way, and not just being in this relation of extracting or taking. And I was like, yeah, something just shifted for me, and I was like, I need to do more of this. Like, I need to learn about this. So yeah.
Thank you. We have a question from Liz, and then Kevin, I'll get to your question after.
Hi, thank you for coming and on your presentation, and all of the work that you're doing is so amazing. I wanted to ask, with these different organizations, what is the like the age group mainly of the youth? Is there like a target age, or is it, you know? Like,
yeah, it's a great question. So for the Bloom Project, we mostly serve youth between the ages of 11 and 20. So we have a pretty wide age range, but more recently, this past summer, we've been able to offer some light programming. We've been having these once a month indoor bouldering, so like rock climbing, for youth as young as age 4. And so, yeah, so that's for the Bloom Project. And then for Camp Founder Girls, it is youth who are in grades 3 through 8. Yeah, 3 through 8. And then for the Brotherhood, I am unsure. That's one that is newer in terms of its structure. And so I'm not sure if we decided yet what the age range, but I think so far it's been high school age. Yeah.
We had a question in the chat from Kevin about if you're a nonprofit or not.
Yes, Black Outside is a 501c3 organization, nonprofit.
Any other questions? I do have a couple more, but I wanted to not take up time. You mentioned that it was when you were on campus and you attended a meeting about abolition, right? And you became hooked to the literature. Do you mind sharing any like foundational, like either the name of a scholar or particular readings that you feel like really like motivated you? Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, first and foremost is definitely Angela Davis. I was also like, being in California, I was able to see her twice in person. She came and gave a talk at one of our campuses. The way our college works is like it's part of a consortium. It's 5 colleges, really 7 colleges. Anyway, but she came and gave a talk, and then I was able to see her in LA at in a panel. Also, Robin D.G. Kelly, who is a scholar at UCLA and has done a lot of work on kind of Black movements for social justice. Also, Fred Moten is another person who has some awesome work on abolition. One of the books is called The Undercommons by Fred Moten, and the other person's name is escaping me. But yeah, Angela Davis, I mean, she has the book Are Prisons Obsolete? She also has another book that I'm forgetting the title of, but anything by her really. And then also a lot of the like resources that I found was through this organization called Critical Resistance. They're a national grassroots prison abolition organization, and they have chapters in different places, but I became connected with the chapter that was in LA, as well as the one in Oakland. And yeah, they have like lots of resources on their site, and I was able to get several trainings for different things I was involved in from them. And so just participating in their trainings and then also being trained by them to lead some of their trainings on abolition was really informative in learning about abolition. Yeah.
Oh, that's super helpful. And it's really cool to see how you apply what you learn like within your own context, which is kind of like the way I was hoping for the class to like be, to be an explicit theme in the class, right? Like here are the literatures that you can read that really have you thinking differently and imagining new worlds. And then here are folks who are constructing those new worlds with what they've learned. So thank you for sharing. We have
one more person that was really informative. Dean Spade is another scholar, writer. Just done a lot really also related to like, I think queer theory, legal scholarship, and abolition, those kind of 3 in play, but yeah.
Thank you. And we started the class with Mariam Kava's, there was like a visual history of mutual aid. And we kind of looked at mutual aid organizations that exist now in San Antonio, and there is surprisingly a lot more than we assumed exist. So I think that's really cool that you're also an extension of that here in our community. Ray asked, how has COVID changed your process?
Great question. Yeah, like most organizations, COVID had an impact on us. So yeah, 2021 was actually our first full year running programming. Piloted the program November of 2019, and took a break to get feedback and then figure out how to pilot like the next more fuller iteration in 2020. And then yeah, we were able to do some programming late February and then through mid-March, and then COVID. And so we kind of paused what we had planned for the rest of that year. We were able to do a few things. We had transitioned to Black Outside as a whole. We transitioned to supporting Black-owned businesses in San Antonio. So we were like buying stuff from Squeezers, which is a Black-owned juice company in San Antonio, or like Tank's Pizza, Black-owned pizza restaurant, and we were supporting them and also supporting our families. So we would buy stuff and then drop it off to our families during that time. And then in 2021, we Bloom Project, we tried the virtual thing. So like 60% of our program this past year was virtual. And in some ways it was better than, I don't know, expected. I think it like was pretty solid in some ways. Those ways being that like youth were consistently showing up. In other ways, it was super challenging to try to build community in a virtual setting, especially because we were also piloting a new program. We had started this mentorship program, so we had mentorship pods. We had mentors from across the U.S., and we had paired 2 mentors with 3 to 5 youth. And so we were doing like monthly meetings. But yeah, I think now looking at 2020, COVID is still an issue. But yeah, we don't intend to do any virtual programming this year. This past year, we've learned we just had to like take more precautions. So when we did do the camping trips to Lost Maple State Park and Big Bend, and then to Colorado, we had certain like COVID protocols in place. So we had like 2 rounds of testing, for example, recommendations around quarantining, wearing masks, etc., to be able to do those in-person trips. And so, yeah, that might be something that we need to continue to do, being that, like for the Colorado trip, for example, I think it was just half of our youth were vaccinated. The other half weren't. So anyway, the way it's like changed our process overall is that we experimented with the virtual learning thing, and then just having to put more protocols in place to make sure that, we can reconnect in person, but also in a safe way. Yeah.
And I'm curious, do you have any advice to folks who have ideas but think that it would seem impossible to like do them? Like, are there any initial tips that you can give, and just sort of like how to get over that overwhelming sense of like, how do I do this though?
Yeah, definitely. I experienced a lot of self-doubt when I was ideating and planning to start the Bloom Project. But it was helpful, and I think what got me over that was I'm someone who really believes in like the usefulness and like power of writing things down. And so if you have an idea, like it's good to get it out of your head. So writing it down, that's part of like my manifestation when I'm goal setting, but also just telling other people about your idea. So I told the idea to my partner at the time, as well as to friends and colleagues. And the feedback I was getting from them was really positive. They were really encouraging. And so, yeah, just getting the idea out of your head so that it can become something that you can get feedback on and that you can manifest if it's something you really believe in. Yeah, and also just like, you know, once you're able to get feedback, I mean, take the feedback that resonates with you. And yeah, I definitely, I look back at old journals of when I was writing about the Bloom Project and trying to plan it out, and yeah, just seeing like what the idea was at its like earliest form to kind of what it's become is cool to see. So yeah, that's definitely like my number one piece of advice. And then I don't know if you can find people to support the idea or kind of make the idea a reality with you. Yeah, I felt very grateful to have a lot of community support once I moved back to San Antonio, and saying like, this is what I want to do, and seeing if, you know, I could partner, collaborate with people who could help me get this thing off the ground, or from an idea to like an actual reality.
Thank you so much. Liz says the big give starts tomorrow is a good way to raise funds. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for our guest speaker? Okay, thank you so much, Ki'Amber, for making time to be here with us and to share about your organization. I'm so grateful and I'm so excited that there are these templates for us as we're reading theory to look to and recognize how people are doing this in the community. We're from San Antonio, who are giving back to San Antonio. It's very personally meaningful for me being from here. So I'm very grateful for your work and for your time with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sylvia, for the invite. Thank y'all for the awesome questions. If y'all do have any other questions or want to talk more, definitely feel free to reach out. Sylvia has my email.
I would definitely share your email. I love that you gave the list of recommendations and titles, so I'll share that with the class as well. Thank you, Kevin. He just followed the IG page, which is really awesome. But yes, thank you so much. Class, if you want to stay on for a little bit, we will get out after that, but I just want to check in about some of the emails I got about his questions. But again, thank you so much, Ki'Amber, for being here. Take care. I'll email you
Bye.
soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye. Okay, I just wanted to check in really quickly because I got a few emails about the quiz questions and the reading itself, which is super dense and it's very like theoretically driven. But I just wanted to get some feedback. I haven't looked at any of the quiz responses or done grading yet. But I just wanted to let folks know that I understand that that is a thing, that racial formation theory is, and a lot of theories related to understanding and naming what race is. Because if we were to answer that question, right? Oh, let me go ahead and stop the recording. This is class.